I want to play a little night music for Bob Kluckhohn. Bob is an owl, not a lark. Bob is a night person. It's overstating things to call him nocturnal, but I think it's fair to say that he brightens with energy and attention as the sun slides down the western sky. You'll find Bob at our evening masses, usually in the narthex, welcoming congregants as they file in, giving them their bulletins, greeting them warmly. I assert that even now, on that other shore where there are no shadows, where God's light shines undimmed, Bob is present in a cheerful, yet somehow twilight spirit. Surely Bob continues to love the eve of the day, when God's light shines in dusky amber. Surely even in the land of constant light, surely even there, God makes room for night owls. Bob can even be found in, or at least he can be found near, Holy Scripture. I think of Bob as the unnamed companion of Cleopas, the two of them hiking in the evening, a lengthy 7-mile hike. Cleopas and Bob are crunching along a rough Roman road, trying to make sense of the resurrection. Bob is just the kind of person most likely to run into Jesus on the road at sunset. And as long as we're casting Bob in the part of the unnamed companion of Cleopas, we may as well imagine Bob's beloved wife, Prue, in the role of Cleopas herself. Prue is not a night owl as much as she is tireless. She would probably be up for a 7-mile evening walk, even if she had been at the tomb at daybreak with the myrrh-bearing women. She would have made sure they had the right canisters for their spices. And then in the evening, she would be the hiker who remembered to pack dinner. In any case, Bob remains our companion even now, even when we gather too early for our prayers, sometimes as early as 5 a.m., the other end of Easter Day. Bob is here. How could it be otherwise at St. Paul's? This is Bob's home. And Bob would appreciate it, I believe, if we all learned a good lesson from the night owls who are bound for the village of Emmaus. Let's look again at their story as told by that superb storyteller, Luke the evangelist. It is a story in 4 parts. First, they come together and begin their walk. They gather. And as they gather, they encounter Jesus. That's the first part. Then Jesus opens the holy book with them, and he interprets to them what they find there. They gathered, and then they opened the word. That's the second part. Then they break bread at the table, and in the breaking of the bread, they recognize Jesus. They gathered, opened the word, and broke the bread. That's the third part. And finally, they get up and return to the city to tell others what they saw, what they heard, how their hearts were set on fire. They gathered, opened the word, broke the bread, and were sent by the risen one to tell others. Sending. That's the fourth part. Gather, word, meal, sending. Sound familiar? Bob would appreciate that these evening saints are sketching for us an outline of the Mass, our Sunday prayers, our table prayers of thanksgiving, our prayers that not only show us who we are, but they show us who Jesus is too. Gather, word, meal, sending. We do this every week at Bob's home church. By the time the hikers get back to Jerusalem that same night, they have walked 14 miles round trip. Surely deep darkness had fallen upon them as they walked. How could they see? What about bandits? But as our friend Mark Taylor taught me just yesterday, the Hebrew word for God's very being is a word that means thick darkness. God is our darkness as well as our light. As we sing in Psalm 139, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. God enlightens us, even and perhaps especially in the deepest darkness of our days. So God, who is deep darkness, surrounded them as they returned to their friends. The idea that darkness is good, that darkness is godly, this is probably an elementary insight for a night saint of Bob's caliber. But I hope we also can grasp this, even those of us who, like me, are morning larks and are sluggish with fatigue by sundown. God is our darkness as well as our light. That's the idea. God is our holy darkness, even when the darkness of our war-torn world is dreadful. And God is our holy light, even when the light of our restless world is scorching us. And so as God, who is darkness, carried Cleopas and their companion safely back to their friends at Jerusalem, God, who is darkness, now carries our companion Bob deeper into God's own blazing heart. And God, who is darkness, stays with us at noon and midnight alike and is known to us in the breaking of the bread. All of this brings me, finally, to yet another insight about darkness, inspired by the Hebrew Scriptures and perfect to accompany our commendation prayers for our beloved owl, Bob Kluckhohn. Rabbi Sharon Brous shared this reflection last month, about a week after the terrorist attack on October 7. I finally heard her words yesterday, more than a month into the widening catastrophe that has descended upon the land of the Holy One, imperiling all people of all nationalities and faiths who call that land their home. Rabbi Brous is the founder and senior rabbi at Ikar, a Jewish faith community in Los Angeles. She offers evening wisdom that helps her community cope with these dreadful times. Please understand, these words are first and foremost about and for this rabbi and her people. But I think if we receive them carefully, with gratitude and respect, her thoughts can also assist us today as we grieve the holy death of our dear friend, Bob. Rabbi Brous preached about the creation story in Genesis that introduces us to our first human parents, Adam and Eve. Here are her words. On Yom Kippur, I shared the Midrash about Adam, the first person, on the sixth day of creation, at the end of his first day of his life. The sun begins to set, and Adam starts to panic. He wonders if maybe he did something wrong. As the sky blackens, he becomes increasingly fearful. Could it be that the world is ending? Eve must be scared by Adam's tears and his anxiety, his vulnerability. But she doesn't retreat from him. Instead, she comes close. She sits down right across from him. And they hold each other all night long, weeping and wailing, until, to their astonishment, the world does not return to null and void. Instead, the first hint of a new dawn arises. It is then that they realize this is the way of the world. This, I believe, is the great question of our lives, Rabbi Brous continues. When the night comes, who will sit and weep by your side? Who shares your worry? Who will not be scared away by your grief, but will come closer? Who sees you? And who do you see? End quote. Our friend Bob is not scared away by our grief. He shares our worries. He shares our joys, shot through with sorrows. In his last days in our immediate midst, Bob wept. He wept with sadness about not being able to stay by Prue's side and with his family. He wept with gratitude about his life well lived. He wept about his myriad friendships and loves and passions. But Bob does not just weep in a corner by himself. He also holds his hands out in the dying of the light. And when he grasps us, we find his grip strong. Did not our hearts burn within us while Bob was walking with us on the road? When Bob helped us meet and then recognize Jesus? This very hour, let us get up and tell the others. With Bob's help and by the power of the risen Christ, we will have energy to sing our alleluias long after the sun has set.